Ladies and gentlemen, our next and final speaker is someone who is important to our community here at BISB as a student of our school. Ayana may just be a high school student, but she has a deep passion for science and philosophy, constantly exploring the intricate patterns that define both nature and human progress. Tonight, she'll take us on a thought-provoking journey on what drives us to chaos, but also what pushes us to evolve, adapt, and create meaning in an ever-changing world. As our final speech of the night, please give a huge round of applause for Ayana Gaur.
Good evening, everyone. We've heard a great lineup of amazing speeches tonight, and I promise I won't take up too much of your time. I'd like to start this talk with the story that inspired it. It's about a man and a mountain, and a question that has plagued us for centuries. In 1922, this man, named George Mallory, set off for the first ever full-scale expedition to Mount Everest. The only ever mission to the mountain before that, just a year prior, was a mission solely focused on mapping out the terrain. So, with limited knowledge of the layout, and it being the first time that oxygen tanks were being used for mountain climbing, the chances for this mission success were looking slim. And yet, on that very expedition, May 22nd, 1922, George Mallory and his team achieved the impossible. They had become the first humans to climb above 8,000 feet on Mount Everest. At this moment, they had crossed the summit of all but 5 mountains on the entire planet. This was the highest a human had ever climbed. And when Mallory got back from this incredible achievement, the entire world asked him the same question. Why? Why would you brave the blistering heat, blistering cold, the terrifying heights, and the risk of death just to climb Mount Everest? When George Mallory was asked why, he responded, because it's there. Mallory died just 1 year after this line. On his third and final mission to Mount Everest, the last time he would be seen alive would be just 200 meters away from the summit. We will never find out if he did or did not conquer Everest, but one thing is clear. This almost indifferent attitude to an achievement so great has cemented his legacy and honestly left the world with more questions. Because why would someone sacrifice their time, their skill, and eventually their life to something just because it's there? Clearly, there must be something deeper here, something more that pushes humans to act this way. So, I went on my own expedition. Most human actions can be traced back to the desire for survival. It's why we eat, it's why we kill, and it's why we love. But why do we build pyramids, or climb Everest, or go to the moon? These things don't really scream survival. Quite the opposite, actually, because aren't we wasting energy and risking death through these actions? They're contradicting each other. Why would we waste energy on something like this rather than on surviving? There must be something deeper that connects both of these. And luckily, this waste of energy part is a well-studied concept in physics. Let me introduce entropy. Imagine this. You've left a cup of scalding hot coffee in an airtight room. The dots represent the particles of coffee and air, and their color represents how much energy or temperature they have. So you leave your coffee here, and a full day ticks by. Over that time, that energy in your coffee won't just sit there. It'll spread out and mingle amongst the air particles. And eventually, by the time you come back, your coffee will look something like this. The energy that was once packed into your coffee has become evenly spread about the entire room. It's at an equilibrium. This is entropy. This is the waste of energy we were talking about. It's how this structured energy has that was used to heat up your coffee has now become unable to do that same thing again. And it's about how this process is irreversible. Because if you think about trying to take the energy from the air particles and putting them back into your coffee, it's like moving water with a strainer. Just not possible. Once it has become disordered, it cannot become ordered again. There's an important law concerning entropy called the second law of thermodynamics, which states that the entropy within a closed system must always increase. Going back to your coffee, this means that the structured or concentrated energy, no matter what, must always spread out and randomize to increase entropy. This is a universal and inescapable law. But why is it important? Well, if entropy must always increase within closed systems, and we consider our universe as its own closed system, then that means this pattern of order into disorder is happening to everything around us. But with that, a paradox arises. Because are we not structures of particles ourselves? And are we not sitting inside a structure right now? So how can we exist if entropy dictates that structure must always decay? So are scientists wrong? Is entropy decreasing over time? Well, no, quite the opposite. It's a law for a reason. Think of it this way. A lot of things are needed to keep you alive, but let's stick to the basics. You need to eat. Let's say this apple. When you eat this apple, you take the energy from it and convert it into things like heat. So what you're doing here is that you're taking the structured low entropy apple and turning it into something higher entropy like heat. You've turned yourself into an entropy creating machine. And this is important because this is why you can continue to live. Because as long as a structure, you, keep increasing entropy, you're still obliging by the second law of thermodynamics. But the moment a structure stops increasing entropy, that structure begins to decay. For us, that means death. So life is only possible because it is an incredibly effective way of increasing entropy. Let's go back to the beginning. Remember when I showed you this? I explained that the desire for survival doesn't explain why we do more than survive. It doesn't explain why we thrive. Well, the universe is constantly trying to increase entropy more and more effectively. So it's why life can exist, but it's also why we don't stop at just eating apples. As humanity gets more and more complex through technological advancements, the amount of entropy we create also increases. Think about how much more heat, how much more entropy a laptop or computer creates compared to an abacus. This increase in humanity's development is not a coincidence. Because underneath all these human desires of money, power, fame, even curiosity, lies the universe's desire to increase entropy. The pyramids, Mount Everest, the moon landings, they're not wastes of energy, but massive, massive increases in entropy. Think of how much energy is used up and released trying to mine for materials and build a pyramid, or how much heat is released trying to do the extreme labor required to climb a mountain, or how much energy it takes to build and power a rocket all the way to the moon. We go above and beyond survival, not in spite of the universe, but because of it. It is literally our job as structures existing in this universe to evolve, create, grow, innovate, just to increase entropy. So the next time you're wondering why you push yourself, why any of it counts, remember that the second law of thermodynamics is the first law of humanity. You do it because you're human, and you do it because it's there. Thank you.